Morning sunlight filtered through the front windows of the restaurant, painting soft golden lines across the floor. The place had just opened, and the light chatter of the kitchen had begun. In that early hour, only the staff moved around cleaning tables, arranging chairs, setting up counters, and preparing for the busy day ahead. Among them was a young worker who always arrived before almost everyone else. He wasn't loud or bold. He didn't try to impress anyone. He simply worked quietly, carefully, and with full focus. Every morning, he wiped down the tables with slow, steady movements. He made sure every corner looked neat. He never rushed, but he also never wasted time. Even the manager sometimes said, "He works like he's carrying some kind of purpose inside him." But no one really knew what that purpose was. The restaurant wasn't just any restaurant. It belonged to a well-known owner, a man who loved to joke around with his staff. He wasn't cruel. He simply enjoyed teasing in a harmless way. He had built the place from nothing and treated his workers like family. He liked making them laugh, even during stressful hours. But there was one thing inside the restaurant that hardly anyone used: the old piano in the corner near the window. It was mostly decoration now. Long ago, the owner had hired musicians to play during weekends, but those days had become rare. The piano sat there, gathering dust slowly, although it still looked grand and full of stories. One morning, as the staff prepared for the lunch rush, the owner walked out from his office. He stretched his arms, cracked a few jokes, and began chatting with everyone. When he noticed the quiet young worker cleaning near the piano, he stopped for a moment and watched him. The boy's eyes kept drifting toward the piano keys, almost as if something was pulling him in. The owner grinned and walked toward him. "You like that piano?" he asked. His voice was playful, not serious. The boy quickly looked away from the instrument. "I was just cleaning around it, sir." The owner laughed. "Cleaning? Huh? You looked like you were planning to play it." The staff nearby chuckled. They had never seen the young worker touch the piano or even speak about music. He always kept to himself. The owner wasn't trying to embarrass him. He was simply being himself, light, teasing, full of humor. Then he said something that made everyone turn their heads. "Tell you what," he said. "If you can play that famous song, yes, the one everyone knows, I'll hire you forever." He laughed after saying it, and the others laughed with him. The young worker forced a small smile. His face showed a mix of shyness and discomfort. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and continued cleaning. To everyone around, it was just a joke, a harmless tease from the owner, something to lighten the mood at the start of the day. But inside the young worker, the joke hit something deep, something old. As he wiped the piano gently, his fingers brushed over the keys. The touch felt familiar, almost like greeting an old friend he hadn't seen in years. He quickly pulled his hand back, hoping no one noticed. But the owner did see. "You do want to play it?" the owner said with a laugh. The boy shook his head, still avoiding eye contact. "No, sir, I just clean it." "Ah, come on," the owner said, still smiling. "Life's too short to be shy. If you can play, just play. I'll keep you here forever." He said it loudly, so the whole staff heard. Some laughed again. Some looked curious, but the boy just nodded and stepped away. The day went on as usual. Customers came in, orders were taken, plates were carried back and forth, and the kitchen stayed loud with sizzling sounds and voices. The young worker moved around smoothly, doing his job like always, working quietly in the background. But every time he passed the corner where the piano stood, his eyes drifted toward it. No one knew what was playing inside his head. In reality, the boy grew up in a small town far from the city. Life wasn't easy there. His family didn't have much. But when he was little, someone living nearby, an elderly man, owned a broken old keyboard. The man had seen the young boy watching him from the window every evening as he played simple tunes. One day, that man invited him inside and placed the boy's hands on the keys. That was the first time the boy felt music. Inside him, something warm, something alive, something that made every struggle feel lighter. The old man taught him a few notes, then more. They weren't perfect lessons. Sometimes the keyboard didn't work properly. Sometimes a key got stuck, and sometimes the sounds faded. But the boy didn't care. He learned to play with emotion, with heart, with feeling. Then, years later, the old man passed away. The keyboard was given to the boy, but life changed quickly. His family needed money. The boy had to start working, first small jobs, then bigger ones. The keyboard eventually stopped working completely, and so he left music behind, not because he wanted to, but because life didn't give him a choice. Now, standing in the restaurant, looking at that piano, memories flooded him, but he pushed them aside. This wasn't the place for dreams. He had responsibilities, a job, bills to support. He couldn't risk embarrassing himself. Still, the owner's words stayed on his mind. That evening, after the lunch crowd faded and the restaurant entered its quiet afternoon routine, the owner returned to his office. The staff took short breaks, chatted softly, and rested before dinner hours began. The young worker noticed the piano again, sitting alone in the golden light of the setting sun. He looked around. The dining area was empty, no customers, no staff nearby. Everyone seemed to be in the back, busy with tasks or taking a break. Slowly, almost unwillingly, he walked toward the piano. He placed his hand on the keys again. His heart thumped hard. He pressed one key softly. The sound vibrated through the air like a whisper. It was warm, clean, and alive, nothing like the broken keyboard from his childhood. His eyes softened. He pressed another key, then another. Before he knew it, he was playing a simple tune he remembered from long ago, a melody the old man taught him on the very first day. It was gentle, almost like a memory speaking out loud. He didn't realize that two workers had stepped into the dining area. They stopped, shocked, as they listened. They had never heard the boy speak much, let alone play the piano, but his fingers moved with natural confidence. The melody flowed beautifully, even though it was simple. There was emotion in every note. One of them whispered, "I didn't know he could do that." The other nodded, eyes wide. He never told anyone. The young worker didn't notice them. He was lost in the music. Every note felt like a door opening back into his past. For the first time in years, he felt like himself again, not just a worker, not just someone trying to survive, but someone who once dreamed. He finished the tune softly and pulled his hands away, almost afraid of his own feelings. When he looked up and saw the two workers near the door, he froze. They didn't laugh. They didn't tease. They didn't look amused. Their expressions were full of real, honest surprise. One of them said softly, "Why don't you show the owner? You're really good." The boy shook his head quickly. No. It was just for a moment. I can't do that in front of people." "But he said he'll hire you forever," one whispered back, reminding him of the joke. "It was only a joke. I can't take it seriously," the young worker replied. But the worker's expression showed something else, fear mixed with hope, a feeling he didn't want to admit. The two other staff didn't push him. They walked away, but the news spread among the team quietly. By the end of the day, half the staff knew that the quiet boy could play the piano beautifully. Nobody mocked him. Instead, they were impressed, curious, even excited. Something like this didn't happen in their everyday routine. It added mystery, excitement, and warmth to the atmosphere. But the owner still didn't know a thing. He continued to joke around for the next few days, still teasing everyone, still spreading laughter. But sometimes he glanced at the young worker with a playful smirk, saying, "Still thinking about the piano? Or ready to earn a lifetime contract?" The boy just smiled politely each time, trying to look unaffected. But every night when the restaurant closed and most of the lights were turned off, he found himself looking at the piano again. That one moment of playing had stirred something deep inside him, something he thought he had buried forever. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if he should take the challenge seriously or keep avoiding it. But fate was slowly bringing him closer to a moment that would reveal everything, not only to the owner and the staff, but also to himself, and that moment was coming sooner than he expected. The restaurant grew busier with each passing day, and although everything looked normal from the outside, something different was happening inside. Ever since the evening when the young worker played the piano for a few minutes, the staff had begun to look at him with new eyes. There wasn't judgment or teasing, just quiet, curiosity, and a kind of unexpected respect. Some of the older workers whispered to each other, saying things like, "He plays better than people who take lessons," or you could hear feeling in every note. Others simply watched him a bit longer when he passed by the piano, wondering if he would touch it again. But he didn't, not even once. He kept his head down and focused on his tasks, moving through the restaurant with his usual calm and steady pace. He seemed unchanged on the outside, but on the inside, the music was still playing in his mind every day. Instead of fading away, the memory of that moment grew stronger. It had awakened something that had been sleeping inside him for years. Still, he didn't want anyone to know. He worried that if he played again, he might disappoint those who had praised him. He worried the owner might think he was trying to show off. And more than anything else, he worried about the possibility of dreaming again, because dreams, he knew, could break your heart when life doesn't match them. So he stayed quiet. One afternoon, near the end of the week, the owner came out of his office with a big smile on his face. He seemed more excited than usual. The staff guessed he had some new plan, because he always got this look whenever he had an idea. He clapped his hands loudly and said, "Listen up, everyone. This weekend we're hosting a special event. Good food, good music, lots of customers. I want everything perfect." The workers nodded and exchanged looks. It meant they would be busier, more tired, but also that the restaurant would be filled with energy. Then the owner's gaze landed on the young worker, standing near the counter. "And you," he said, pointing at him with a playful grin, "I hope you're ready." "Ready for what?" the boy asked quietly. "For your performance," the owner replied with a laugh. "Did you think I forgot my promise? If you play that famous song this weekend, I'll hire you forever." A few staff members who knew about his secret playing felt a spark of excitement, but they kept their expressions steady. They didn't want to push him. The boy's face turned serious. He swallowed, then said, "Sir, I don't think I should." The owner interrupted immediately. "Relax. I'm just teasing. It's up to you." He waved his hand casually and walked away, chuckling. But it would make the event unforgettable. The young worker stood there silently, unsure how to feel. The owner wasn't pressuring him, not really. The tone was still playful. The challenge was still a joke. But more and more, it was becoming clear that this wasn't just a game to everyone else anymore. Later that evening, when the dinner rush had calmed down, two workers approached him. They didn't corner him or try to force anything. They just walked beside him like friends. One of them said softly, "If you want to play this weekend, we're all supporting you." The boy didn't answer. The other added, "No pressure. But you should know, we think you're really good. Better than you realize." He felt warmth rise in his chest at their kind words, but he simply nodded and walked away. His thoughts were too tangled to share. When he went home that night, he couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. His mind kept replaying the gentle tune he had played days earlier. He remembered how natural it felt, how peaceful. He remembered how the sound filled the empty restaurant with something warm. He thought about the challenge. I thought about the old man who had once believed in him. He thought about how he used to dream of playing music for people, not just for himself. But then he also thought about how he never finished school, how he had no formal training, how he was just a worker in a busy restaurant. What if he played and made mistakes? What if the customers laughed? What if he embarrassed the owner? What if he embarrassed himself? The fear pressed heavily on him, but another feeling was growing inside him, too, something stronger than fear. It was hope, a tiny spark, but bright enough to be felt. The next morning, when he returned to work, he tried to hide his restlessness. He moved through his tasks as usual, but the staff could sense that something was on his mind. He avoided the piano entirely, not even glancing at it by the afternoon. The owner called a short meeting. He explained the schedule for the weekend event: extra staff, special menu, extra seating arrangements. It was going to be a big night. Just as the meeting ended, the owner turned toward the boy again, raising his eyebrows. Still thinking about the piano, the boy hesitated for a moment. Then he said softly, "Sir, which song did you mean? The one you were talking about?" The room went silent for a moment. The owner blinked, surprised. "You're asking about the song," he said, a smile growing on his face. The boy nodded. Double quotes. "Well," the owner clapped his hands together. "The famous one. Everyone knows it. It's simple, beautiful, emotional. The musicians used to play it years ago. You probably heard it somewhere." The boy lowered his eyes. "I think I know it." The owner laughed, delighted. "Really? Then maybe you should give us a preview." The boy immediately shook his head. "Not now." The owner didn't argue. He simply smiled and said, all right, take your time." As the staff walked away, many of them felt a quiet excitement. They knew he was getting closer to accepting the challenge. They knew he was thinking seriously now. By the time the restaurant closed that night, something felt different inside him. He stayed longer than usual, helping clean up. He moved slowly, lost in thought. One by one, the staff left, saying their goodbyes. The lights dimmed. The kitchen quieted. Eventually, he stood alone in the empty dining room. The piano sat in the corner again, silent, untouched. The same soft golden lights that illuminated it days ago now cast a warm glow over its polished surface. He took a slow breath and walked toward it. His hands shook slightly as he pulled the bench out and sat down. His reflection stared back at him in the glossy black surface of the piano, almost asking him a question silently. "Are you ready?" He placed his fingers gently on the keys. Not to play a song, not yet. Just to feel them. Another breath, and then another. He closed his eyes. His shoulders relaxed. His fingers pressed the first note. The sound filled the empty room, soft and deep. It spread through the silence like a whisper. He pressed another note, then another. The melody he needed to play for the challenge came back to him, piece by piece, like something that had been asleep for years, but still remembered its way home. He began to play the actual song, the one the owner mentioned. It was slow, emotional, and full of small, delicate details. His hands moved carefully at first, then more confidently. The notes grew smoother, clearer, more alive. The song wasn't just music, it was a memory. He had heard it often when he was young, played by the old man on his broken keyboard. The tune carried sadness and hope at the same time. It made him think of everything he had lost and everything he still wanted to find. He played until the last note faded into silence. When he opened his eyes, he realized he wasn't alone. Two workers stood near the doorway again, watching him with quiet admiration. They hadn't made a sound. They didn't interrupt. They simply stood there, stunned by what they heard. "You're ready," one of them whispered. The boy didn't argue this time. He didn't shake his head. He didn't say no. He just sat there silently, staring at the piano keys. Because he knew it too. He was ready, maybe not perfect, maybe not fearless, but ready enough to try, ready enough to play again in front of others, ready enough to face the moment that was coming on the weekend, the moment that could change everything, that for the first time in a long time, he wanted that moment to come. The next morning arrived with a strange mix of nervousness and quiet hope. The worker's son woke up earlier than usual, long before the sun had fully risen. His small room behind the shop was still cool, but his thoughts were warm and restless. He had barely slept last night, replaying every sound, every moment, every tiny gesture from the evening at the piano. The shop owner's reaction stayed in his mind, those few seconds of silence, followed by the owner walking away without saying much. It wasn't clear if the owner was impressed, or confused, or simply thinking. That mystery sat in the boy's chest like a weight. But today, he told himself, would be different. Today he would know. He got dressed quietly, brushed his hair back, and stepped outside. The morning air smelled like dew and fresh bread from the bakery down the street. He walked slowly to the front of the shop, where his father was already sweeping the entrance. His father looked up and gave him a tired smile. Ready for the day? The boy nodded, though he wasn't fully sure. He didn't want to tell his father everything that happened last night. Not yet. Not until he understood what it meant. Inside the shop, the owner was already sitting behind the counter with a cup of tea. He looked up when the boy walked in, but said nothing at first. His eyes followed the boy's steps, the way someone studies a puzzle they're trying to solve. The boy quietly helped arrange the shelves, but he could feel the owner's gaze every few minutes. Something was different today. Finally, the owner cleared his throat. "Come here for a moment." The boy froze for a second, then walked over. The owner's voice was unusually steady, neither harsh nor playful. "Last night, that song you played, tell me something. Where did you learn it?" The boy hesitated. I just listened. I never learned formally." "You're telling me you played that from memory?" "Yes." The owner leaned back. "And the keys, the timing, you didn't read any notes?" "No, sir." The owner stared at him a moment longer, then let out a slow breath. "Sit." The boy sat on the small wooden stool beside the counter, his hands resting nervously in his lap. The owner took another sip of tea and looked straight into his eyes. "What you did last night wasn't normal talent. That comes once in a long time. You didn't just play the song. You played it the way someone plays who understands what music is supposed to feel like." The boy didn't know how to respond. No one had ever spoken to him like that, the owner continued. "But I still don't understand something. Why did you hide your skill?" The boy looked down. "I wasn't sure if anyone would take me seriously. And now, I still don't know." The owner tapped his fingers on the counter, thinking, "Well, I talked to someone after you left last night." The boy looked up, confused. "Someone who?" The owner didn't answer immediately. He got up and motioned for the boy to follow him to the back room. The room was usually used to store boxes and supplies, but today it was clean, with a chair placed in the middle. Next to it was the piano-covered instrument the owner had bought but barely used. The owner pointed to the chair. "Sit." The boy sat down, but his heart began beating faster. "Sir, what's happening?" "You're going to play again," the owner said firmly. "Not for me. For someone else." The boy's eyes widened. "Who?" Before he could finish, the back door opened softly. A tall man in a dark coat stepped inside. His hair was neatly brushed, and he carried a small leather notebook. The owner said nothing. He simply nodded respectfully to the man. The tall man studied the boy with calm, thoughtful eyes. "So, you're the one." The boy grew nervous. "Sir, who are you?" The man took a step forward. "I am someone who listens to talent for a living," the shop owner added. "He runs a small group that works with music schools, youth programs, competitions, things like that. He knows talent better than anyone I've met." The tall man nodded again. "Last night, your shop owner sent me a short recording." The boy's heart nearly stopped. You recorded me." The owner raised his hands. "Only a few seconds. I needed someone skilled to confirm what I heard." The tall man kept his eyes on the boy. and those few seconds were enough. Now I want to hear you live. The boy swallowed hard. His palms began to sweat. He wasn't ready for this. His mind felt too loud. I'm not sure if I can. Yes, you can, the tall man said softly. Just sit, take a breath, and play whatever comes naturally. The owner came closer and rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. No pressure. Just let the music talk. The boy stared at the piano keys. His fingers trembled slightly. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, faster than usual, like a drum echoing inside his chest. He took a slow breath and placed his hands gently on the keys. His fingers sat still for a moment, then slowly began to move, almost on their own. He didn't choose a song. He just let the emotions inside him pour out. The notes came out soft at first, like the whisper of a memory. Then they grew stronger, deeper, filled with the feeling he carried: his dreams, his fear, his hope, and his quiet desire to belong somewhere. The tall man watched without blinking. The owner stood with arms crossed, but his eyes were shining with something close to pride. The boy played for several minutes until the room fell quiet again. When he lifted his hands off the keys, he felt shaky, as if he had given too much of himself in those moments. The tall man finally spoke. This is rare. The owner frowned slightly. Rare good or rare bad? The tall man smiled a little. Rare good. The boy let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. The tall man walked around the piano, serving the boy from another angle. How old are you? The boy answered quietly. 14. And you've never taken lessons? Never attended any training? Nothing. No, sir. The tall man closed his notebook. Do you want to? The boy looked up, surprised. Want to? To learn, to train, to grow, to become someone who plays not only with heart, but with skill. His voice softened. You have the ability. Most people spend years searching for that. The boy felt his throat tighten. I would love to, but I don't have money. The tall man exchanged a look with the shop owner, then said, let me decide that after I see you one more time. One more time. Yes, the tall man said. Tomorrow at noon, there's a small music studio nearby. Come there. Play again. If what I heard today wasn't just luck, we will talk about your future. The boy didn't know what to say. His mind felt light and heavy at the same time that the tall man walked toward the door. Don't be late. When he left, the room felt strangely big and quiet. The owner stepped closer and looked at the boy with a firm, proud expression. You have a chance many people only dream of. Don't waste it. The boy nodded slowly. Thank you for believing in me. The owner shook his head. Thank me later. Make tomorrow count. The boy sat still for a moment after the owner left. He looked at the piano again, this time not with fear or doubt, but with a soft smile. Tomorrow wasn't just another day. Tomorrow could change everything. Then, for the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he deserved the chance. The next day arrived faster than the boy expected. He barely slept through the night. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the piano keys, the tall man's calm voice, and the owner's firm words. He kept imagining what could happen at the music studio, and every imagination made his heart race even more. Sometimes he felt excited, sometimes scared, sometimes unsure, but he knew one thing: this day was not ordinary. He woke up before the sun had even stretched across the sky. His father was still asleep in the small room beside his. The boy moved quietly so he wouldn't wake him. He washed his face, combed his hair, and wore the same simple clothes he always did. He didn't own anything fancy. But today, all he needed was courage. He glanced at the small mirror hanging by the wall. His face looked the same as yesterday, but something inside him felt different, stronger, braver, like he was stepping into a world he had always dreamed about but never believed he would reach. He walked outside into the cool morning air. The streets were empty except for a few shopkeepers preparing for the day. When he reached the front of the shop, the owner was already waiting. He stood with his hands behind his back, his expression serious but calm. You're early, the owner said. I couldn't sleep, the boy admitted. That's normal. Big days do that. The owner handed him a small paper bag. There's some bread inside. Eat on the way. The boy looked surprised. For me. For your brain, the owner replied simply. You'll play better if you're not hungry. The boy smiled softly. Thank you. The owner nodded. Don't thank me yet. Save that for later. They walked together for a short distance until they reached the main road. The owner pointed left. The studio is in that direction. Just keep walking until you see a blue sign with golden letters. You can't miss it. You're not coming? The boy asked quietly. No, the owner said. This part, you have to do alone. And besides, he didn't ask for me. The boy nodded slowly. Something about doing this alone scared him, but he knew the owner was right. The owner gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Remember what I said yesterday. Don't try to impress anyone. Just be yourself. Let the music speak. I will. And whatever happens today," the owner added, "know that you already made me proud." The boy felt something warm in his chest. The owner had never said something like that before. He carried those words with him like a quiet strength as he walked toward the studio. The roads grew busier as he moved through the town. Small shops opened their shutters. People hurried to work. Street vendors arranged their carts. It felt strange walking through everyday life while knowing something extraordinary might happen in the next hour. Finally, he saw the blue sign with golden letters. The music studio looked simple from the outside, but its windows had soft curtains, and a small bench sat near the entrance. The boy took a deep breath and stepped inside. The moment he entered, he smelled polished wood and heard faint notes from a nearby room. The studio wasn't big. It had 3 rooms and a small waiting area. The tall man from yesterday stood near a table, reading some papers. When he looked up and noticed the boy, he closed the folder and approached him. "You came early," the tall man said. "Yes, so good. It shows you're serious." The boy wasn't sure what to say, so he just nodded. The tall man motioned for him to follow. They walked into a room with bright lights, soft walls to absorb sound, and a beautiful grand piano in the center. This one looked far more expensive than the piano at the shop. Its keys shined like they were waiting for someone worthy to touch them. The tall man stood near the side and said, "Take your time. Look around. Get comfortable." The boy walked slowly toward the piano. He touched the edge gently, almost like greeting an old friend. His fingers were cold, but his heart was warm. "Before we begin," the tall man said, "I want to explain something." The boy turned. There are many young people who want to play music. Some train for years, but only a few develop a true connection with the instrument. When I heard you yesterday, I didn't hear practice. I heard a natural gift. The boy felt his face grow warm. No one had ever spoken to him like this. But with natural gift comes responsibility. The tall man continued, "You must work hard. You must learn discipline. You must stay humble. Are you ready for that?" The boy nodded. "I think so." "You don't need to think," the tall man said gently. "You need to feel it." The boy closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded again with more certainty. "Yes, I'm ready." "Good," the tall man said. "Now sit. Play something. Anything. Let me hear your heart again." The boy sat on the bench. His hands rested above the keys. For a moment he could hear nothing but his own breathing. Then he slowly pressed the first key. The sound was warm, clean, and rich, far more powerful than any piano he had touched before. His nerves melted away as the music pulled him in. His hands began moving, faster and smoother, guided not by technique but by emotion. He played a melody that started soft and slow, like the beginning of a story. Then it grew bolder, stronger, filled with everything he felt about his life, his struggles, his dreams, the pain of being underestimated, the hope of being heard. The tall man stood still, listening with deep focus. He didn't move, not even once. The boy didn't know how long he played. Time felt blurry, like the world outside the room no longer existed. When he finally lifted his hands from the piano, he felt breathless but relieved, as if he had emptied his heart completely into the notes. The room stayed silent for a moment. Then the tall man spoke. "That was remarkable." The boy swallowed. "Was it good enough?" "It was more than good enough," the tall man answered. "It was honest, and honesty is rare." He walked closer, his expression serious but encouraging. "I want to offer you something." The boy leaned forward slightly. "There is a small program I run," the tall man explained. "It helps young people with talent. We train them, guide them, and prepare them for bigger opportunities. Concerts, competitions, scholarships." The boy listened with wide eyes, but the tall man continued. "We only accept a few students each year. It's not easy to get in, and we usually require fees." The boy's heart sank. He knew he couldn't afford even the smallest amount. "But in your case," the tall man added, "I've decided something." The boy looked up, confused. "You will join the program for free." The boy froze. "Free, yes. On full support." The boy felt his throat tighten. He could barely speak. "But, why, I'm just a worker's son. I don't have anything special except," the tall man raised a hand, "except music, and that is enough." The boy felt tears fill his eyes but tried to hold them back. The tall man continued gently. "You have something powerful inside you, something that deserves a chance. And I'm willing to give you that chance, not because of your background, not because of who your parents are, but because of who you are when you touch those keys." The boy covered his mouth with his hand. Overwhelmed, "Take the offer," the tall man said softly. "Train with us. Grow with us. Let your talent take you somewhere your circumstances never could." The boy nodded slowly, tears still shining in his eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. The tall man gave a small smile. You earned it. A moment later, the studio door opened and the shop owner walked in. He had pretended he wouldn't come, but his eyes told the truth. He had been waiting outside the whole time. Sir, the boy whispered. The owner walked closer and placed a proud hand on the boy's shoulder. I told you, make the day count. The tall man nodded at the owner. He's joining us. Full support. The owner let out a long breath, as if releasing years of silent hope. Good. He deserves it. The boy looked at both men, his heart full, his future suddenly brighter than anything he had ever imagined. That day, everything changed. He didn't return to the shop just as a worker's son. He returned as someone with a chance. A real chance. Someone whose music had opened doors even dreams could not. Someone who proved that talent can come from anywhere, any street, any home, any life, and that sometimes all it takes is one moment, one person who listens, and one brave step into the unknown.